Good evening, everybody. We're starting a few minutes late. It's 7:38, and welcome to the October 7th, 2020 Municipal Land Use Meeting.
Can you hear Dick Merman now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
welcome.
Thank you.
I want to thank Councilwoman Kaufman for hosting again this evening. Her help is invaluable,
Eric
to
Kelly,
say the least.
Councilwoman Kaufman, her mother's dying. She's in Florida, and I'm hosting for her.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm going to thank the mayor for hosting this evening, because last time it was a challenge, and of course, again, it was a challenge to this evening. So, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
We're going to call the meeting to order. We will dispense with the flag salute for obvious reasons. This meeting has been posted in the Borough Hall on the bulletin board on the front door. It's also been noticed in the Record and the Ridgewood News, and to notice has been sent to all people that it was required to be sent to. There's no emergency exits to deal with tonight. So other than that, we're going to start with the meeting, and will I call the roll, please?
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Present.
Mr. Arkelian?
Present.
Ms. Boland is
Ms.
absent.
Boland had to work this evening.
Okay. Mr. Bartoloni?
Here.
Mr. Merman?
Here.
Mr. Grasso is absent tonight. Mr. Cray?
Here.
Mr. Castellan?
Here.
Councilman Keenigo?
Here.
Mr. Gibbons?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Okay. And also on the call is Mr. Behrens tonight.
Okay, just a point of interest here is both Mr. Gibbons and Mr. Esposito will be filling in for regular members this evening, so their votes will be official. At this time, I'm going to go to the approval of the minutes. You should have gotten an email with both the August 19th and the September 16th minutes that were done. We'll take them one at a time. So on August 19th, any questions, any comments? No questions or comments. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes of August 19th, 2020.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Dick Merman.
Do I have a second?
Mike Cray, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Okay, and then we'll go to September 16th, 2020. Any comments? Okay, being that there's no comments, could I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved, Gibbons.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstained? All right, at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Ms. Stinley for a few minutes because she wanted to discuss some new rules that are coming out with the online meetings. Ms. Attorney.
So the State Division of Local Government Services put out emergency regulations and protocols for remote public meetings. Our office is preparing resolutions for all of our other municipalities, and we're going to do one for the Land Use Board as well. The regulations have to, the resolution that the board puts forward just has to set standard rules that the board's going to follow for having remote meetings, including the procedure for commenting, people participating by phone or by Zoom. And so we'll put that together and it should be available for the next agenda.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stinley. Okay, so next up we have two memorializations. Again, you should have received these in your emails. The first memorialization is Darko and Tamara Sobasic, 320 Wales Avenue, Block 115, Lot 23. We approved them at the last meeting. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve this memorialization?
So made, Mr. Chairman, Dick Merman.
Thank you, Mr. Merman. Second?
Second, Gibbons.
Okay. Mr. Gibbons, roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Ms. Boland is absent. Mr. Bartoloni was absent at the last meeting where the where the approval was made. Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Grasso is absent tonight. Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. The next up is the memorialization for Club Feathers, doing business as PDJ Restaurant, LLC, 77 Kinderkamack Road, Block 1410, Lot 4.03. As you recall, this was part of our food handlers license ordinance. Anybody that changes ownership on a food handler that requires a food handler's license has to come before the board for site plan approval. We gave them their approval. We have a memorialization in front of us. That memorialization was subject to the applicant paying his taxes, that he was in arrears. We gave him until October 31st, so he still has some time. To my knowledge, I don't know if he's paid his taxes yet or not. Ms. Finley and I spoke earlier today, but by the time we spoke, the tax people were gone for the day, so she will check tomorrow. The approval of this memorialization tonight would be subject to their taxes being caught up by October 31st. If by chance that doesn't happen, then this memorialization will be put on hold until they do. Is that correct, Ms. Finley?
Yes, it would be as if the approval was not granted.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, any comments or concerns?
Dick Merman here.
Yes, Mr. Merman.
Can we vote on this tonight for approval, but hold the signatures until it's verified of payment?
I believe.
I know we have done that in the past. If that's what the board would like to do, that's fine.
But it is written in here that if they don't pay the taxes, then this is basically moot, correct?
Yes, in the resolution itself, it sets the date for the October 30th payment.
Is there any risk or issue for them if we wait another 20 whatever days that is?
I think that Tom, I guess, would be able to better answer that about with whatever approval they still need.
Trying to see where they are, how this would hold them up.
I mean, they're obviously operating.
They're operating, but in terms of, I mean, at this point, it probably wouldn't hold them up, or I don't know if there would be a detriment per se. Obviously, we run the risk of getting closer to the deadline and having things get muddled. But I mean, if the board's not comfortable signing off at this point because a condition hasn't been met, then the condition hasn't been met.
But because that condition is listed within the memorialization,
yeah,
I don't think there's any risk in signing it tonight and approving it this evening.
Okay.
They know that they have until the 31st. The memorialization is pretty clear in spelling that out. So they run the risk that as of the 31st, if they're not caught up, the memorialization would be nullified anyway. So I don't think there is any reason to hold up the signing tonight. This way, the borough has no liabilities as far as letting them operate without a signed memorialization.
And my other comment is that we've had, with the Zoom meetings, it's been difficult getting signatures back and finalized applications out to the applicants. And so just doing everything on one night simplifies the process and makes sure that the clerk can publish the notice timely and things don't get misplaced.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that as well. Any more comments on that? I'll entertain a motion that we approve the, I'll entertain a motion on this memorialization.
I would make a motion to accept as written.
Do I have a second?
Second, Mike.
Okay.
A roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Keenigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I believe our clerk is on till tonight. Are you still with us, Edwin? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So just maybe just send out a friendly reminder to them tomorrow that their memorialization has been passed. But if they're not caught up by the 31st, that will become nullified. And also, can you just check for us tomorrow with the tax collector and just shoot me an email letting me know where they are?
Yes.
Thank you, Ed. And thanks for being with us tonight.
Sure.
Okay. So next up is, you know what, let's go to the applicants and I'll come back to the discussions on the master plan. So we have a completeness review for Hi Annie Lee. Are they on with us?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I'm here.
Hello there. How are you? Good evening.
Very good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank
you.
you. So as you're aware, the borough requires a site plan approval for a food handler license in the borough of River Edge. So you're here tonight. It's for your hearing. And
Yes.
I'm going to ask our attorney to let us know if we can proceed.
Okay.
Yes, so prior to the meeting tonight, I reviewed the proof submitted by the applicant, all of the notice to the newspaper and to property owners within 200 feet. Everything was correct and the board has jurisdiction to proceed.
Mr. Barons?
So I reviewed the applicant's materials, which include the application, I guess we would call copies of the previously approved site plan. I don't believe that I've seen a floor plan of the space, which may or may not be something the board needs to make its determination. Again, this is for a change in tenancy. The current space is occupied by a salon, and the applicant proposes a sort of a retail food establishment, which does not involve any cooking, but pickling of various produce items. So, you know, based on the site plan, I think we have enough to understand what the site looks like. As a condition of approval, the board could request a floor plan of the space, and that may depend on the applicant's testimony if there are any internal changes proposed. So it's up to the board if they have enough information to move forward on this one.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to Ms. Lee. Are you going to be doing tell us what you're going to be doing on your site.
Yes. So I do run an operation right now out of Jersey City. What I do is I make vegetable pickles. And so, you know, using cucumbers and beets and Napa cabbage for kimchi sort of thing, just pickles. So what I do is I just, you know, get these vegetables, wash them, chop them up, and then jar them.
And you'll be doing it on site, correct?
Correct, yes.
And it'll be a retail operation?
So yes, we'll open the store for public and run a small retail shop, yes.
Okay. Tom, as far as the interior layout is concerned, I think maybe we can allow her to verbally explain how she's going to lay it out to us, so we don't have to hold her up.
I think that would be acceptable, and I think in this case in particular, there's no cooking or kitchen or ventilation involved, which would distinguish this from other similar other food handler or restaurant type operations. So I think we have enough to see if the tenant or proposed use is appropriate for the space.
I agree. Anybody else from the board?
You had one question in the application where there's a note that says the construction of the building, there will be no changes made to the construction of the building by us applicant. Are there going to be changes to the building by the owner, or I just want to be clear on what that sentence means.
No, there will be no changes made by the owner or myself.
Okay, so there will be no changes to the building at all?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Dick Merman here.
Yes, Mr. Merman.
I believe this is only completeness review.
This is only completeness, that's correct.
Because I have questions later.
All right, so I have a motion to move this to our regular meeting.
So made.
I have a second.
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 Can I have a roll call, please?
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Alphonse.
Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Ms. Boland is absent, Mr. Bartoloni,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Grasso is absent, Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
and Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay,
All right, Ms. Lee, we'll get back to you in a few minutes, okay?
Okay.
So the next
Should I
one
stay
up.
on?
yes, please.
Yeah, stay on. Just
Okay.
I'll call you back up to the forefront when we're ready for you.
Okay, thank you.
Next applicant is Turek Ben and Fatma Oak. They're, I apologize if I butchered the names here a little bit. 364 Lee Avenue, block 1002, lot 54. And they're looking to put a pool in, which would violate the front yard setback. Are you on, are you folks on with us?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Benjamin Wine. I'm the attorney for the applicants, Tarek Bin and Fatma Ak. It's a pleasure to meet you, at least virtually.
Yes, you too. Okay, so we have the attorney for the applicant, Ms. Stenley.
For the meeting, I reviewed the proof submitted by the applicant and the notice in the newspaper and the notice to neighboring property owners were acceptable for the board to proceed tonight.
Mr. Behrens?
I reviewed the application and materials, which include a site plan and site survey, and it's my opinion that the board has information sufficient to determine the application complete.
Anybody have any questions as far as completeness is concerned? I'll entertain a motion to move this to the regular meeting.
So moved.
Okay.
Do I have, Mr. Castle, do I have a second?
Second.
Second,
Mr.
Mr.
Bartoloni?
Bartoloni.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now I am going to, we are in the new business portion and we have two applicants that have been approved to move forward. So the first applicant up is Ms. Hai Annie Lee, 830 Kinderkamak Road, block 202, lot 23. And it's for a food license application. Good evening again, Ms. Lee.
Good evening.
Hi, so I just have to swear you in before you give any testimony before the board. Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you please state your name and your address for the record, please?
Annie Lee, 1021 Edgewood Lane, Fort Lee, New Jersey, 07024.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lee, do you have anybody else that's going to be testifying this evening, or are you it?
No, it'll be just me, myself.
Okay. So why don't you start out by giving us a little bit more in-depth idea of what you're planning on doing on the site there?
Right, thank you. So I'm going to be making pickled vegetables, mainly kimchi, which I guess I can describe the process here, right? So I buy Napa cabbage and vegetables, then I wash them and I cut them up, and then I would mix in all the ingredients and jar them and then sell them to supermarkets. And in this case, I'll have the store open for public in the town of River Edge and have the public come in and make purchases. So this operation would require just sinks where I can wash vegetables, and then also the containers and dishes that I'd be using, and then some workstations or tables where I can do the work, cut up vegetables and that sort of thing. So those would be the only things I would require in the space.
And how would you transport your product to the supermarkets?
Right. So, I mean, we are only a 2-people company at the moment. It's very small, so it's not like we have a van or anything. We'll be using our own car to make deliveries.
And what about having the produce delivered to the store?
Right. So we'll be using distributors to drop them off in front of the stores, or I guess in the parking space in the back.
Okay, and what kind of vehicle would that be? Do you know?
Mid-sized vans.
A van. Okay, not a truck.
No.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna go to Mr. Behrens.
So just a few more questions, Ms. Lee, just to
Sure.
get all the information. Can you give us the proposed hours of operation and days? So
we may be in there preparing, but opening to public, it'll be from 11:30 till maybe about 4. But we'll be in there making kimchi probably between 7 a.m. and I mean, I haven't set the hours yet, but we normally work from 7 till 7 or 7 to 6, something like that.
And that's 7 days a week, generally, you'd be open?
6 days.
6 days.
What day would you close?
Sundays.
Okay.
And how many employees do you anticipate? You might have already mentioned that, but how many again?
It'll be just me and one other person.
2 employees, okay, I think you said that. So in describing the space or the building, right now, the space you're trying to occupy is occupied by a salon, I believe. It's on the first floor, which is divided into 2 tenant spaces. You'll have the northerly tenant space. The other one is currently occupied by the River Edge Pizza Kitchen. So again, in terms of the interior of the building, what, if any, changes will you be making to your particular tenant space, if any?
Right. So we're going to adhere to health department and make sure we have. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? It says internet connection is no good.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. So we're going to adhere to all the rules by the health department and make sure we have all the proper things that, you know, they require us to have. And then just tables, work tables where we can do our work. And then a few refrigerators where we can put our pickles in, and then also have them available to public.
Would it be sort of like a typical retail layout where the front of the store facing the street is sort of the storefront, and then a closed off area where you do the prep work in the back? Is that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So we'll have a very small space open to public where they can just walk in, and then that'll be the service area where they can pick up a jar of pickles and then just pay, and then the rest of the space will be used for prepping and making pickles.
Will you have access to the basement?
No.
Or the second floor?
No.
Okay. That's all I've got at the moment, if the board has any questions.
Okay, I'm gonna go, as I usually do, down our list and ask each member. So I'll start with Mr. Esposito.
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Gibbons?
No, I assume I know the answer to this, but there's not going to be any consumption. Right, it's all just take out, you purchase your pickle, and you leave.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, that's fine. That's enough for me.
Mr. Caslin?
Hi, Ms. Lee. How many retail customers do you anticipate on a daily basis?
So right now, where I operate, we only deliver to supermarkets, and we don't accept, you know, walk-in customers. So it's a little bit difficult for me to predict, but given the hours of operation, and I don't think there's going to be, you know, a bunch of people just, you know, right, getting kimchi or, you know, pickles, that many people. So I don't anticipate that many people. Maybe, I really can't say. I don't know, maybe 15 to 20 visits a day. I don't know. I mean, at best, I think.
Yeah, best guess is fine. Yeah. And does your lease? I'm assuming you're leasing this space. Does your lease come with any parking?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe 2 spaces.
2 spaces. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Kraft?
No, nothing at this time.
Mr. Mervin?
Yes, Miss Lee, I have 1 or 2 little questions. Regarding your operations, what is your proposed waste disposal?
So right now, you know, as I said, you know, we're starting out, and this is a very small operation. So we sell to just a couple of supermarkets in Manhattan. So at the moment, it's not going to be a lot because, you know, we don't sell a lot.
Well, are you going to have on-site dumpsters, or are you going to carry out your waste?
We're going to carry out. Okay. We don't have access to the basement, no.
Okay. Following up the waste question, when you're done pickling your ingredients, what happens to any remaining liquids?
Liquids?
Yeah.
Like the pickle juice, vinegar.
So we jar them as we make them. So there's no juice waste. Because the way you make kimchi is, you know, you mix in all the ingredients, you mix them, and then after you let it sit there and ferment, then it starts to produce juice. But by then it's already in the bottles.
What? And I noticed, I believe you had some sinks. You're working with some. Is it safe to say that there is no hazardous type materials being disposed in those sinks?
I'm using all the natural ingredients, and I guess my question would be, what would be considered hazardous, like soap? Would soaps be
No,
considered? No?
So basically, you're only using vinegar type ingredients. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, fine. All right. One other item. You obviously are going to have some signage, and I would assume, well, we will require you to adhere to the borough ordinance regarding signage. Okay, that's basically size and so forth.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
That's it, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Merman. Let's see. Mr. Bartoloni.
No, I have nothing.
Sounds like you hit a home run before, by the way.
No, I'm at a soccer game.
Oh, okay. Then I'm going to go to Councilman Caningo. Good evening, Councilman.
Good evening, Chairman. Thank you. Ms. Lee, how many sinks will you be installing?
So in Jersey City, we are required to have a 3-compartment sinks for washing dishes, and then 1 for hand washing. And then I have 2 sinks for just washing vegetables.
So is that 4 altogether that you'll be installing?
So I have 3 different sets. One set that has 3 different compartments, and one set has 2 compartments, and then one has just 1.
Okay. I'm just saying in this establishment, it's those 3 sinks that you're planning to install.
That I have not checked with the health department here, because they told me that I have to pass this first in order to have a conversation with them. So whatever's required by the town of River Edge, you know, we're going to adhere by the guidelines.
Assuming that the health department agrees, though, we're talking about 3 sinks that you're installing?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Then we go to our mayor, Mayor Papaleo.
So I wish you luck, but I want to start off by asking, I just want you to confirm that there's going to be no cooking on the premises.
There will be absolutely no cooking because kimchi, you know, and pickles, you know, there's no cooking involved. At least the way I make them, there's no cooking involved whatsoever.
So, because I'm wondering about whether there'll be an odor and whether we need a ventilation system to require that, but you're saying that will not be necessary.
No.
Okay. You're just doing kimchi, or are you doing pickles? Are you doing tomatoes?
So for now, we're just making kimchi, but we've heard from the supermarkets where we deliver to, they're interested in like beets and jalapeno peppers and some of the vegetables. So we're contemplating at the moment, but mostly it's kimchi for now.
Would any of those future ventures require cooking?
No.
Okay. So we're completely certain there'll be no cooking, and so no need for ventilation and no question of that.
That's correct. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Lee, if we put into the memorialization that there'll be no cooking on the premises, and then if you're down the road, you want to change your mind, you'd have to come back. You'd be
Yes.
okay with it? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
That as a stipulation in the memorialization.
Yes.
Ms. Stinley.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. I have nothing else. So at this point, I'd like to make a motion to open to the public.
So moved.
Second.
Go second.
I think Mr. Caslen.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Are there any public members, Mayor?
No, only panelists.
Then not seeing anybody here, make a motion, entertain a motion to close to the public.
So moved. Gibbons.
Do I have a
Second, Bartoloni.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same. Okay. Being that there's no further questions from anybody, entertain a motion on this application. Mr. Merman.
Okay, I'll take a crack at it, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion that regarding the proposed retail pickling at 830 Kidderkamack Road, Block 12, Lot 23, that we grant approval of a food handler's license with the understanding that there will be no on-site cooking and that the operation is going to take place on the street level floor as opposed to below. There are some parking spots in the rear associated with this tenancy change, and that the applicant agrees to adhere to the Borough of River Edge signs and all applicable health department regulations. Did I leave out anything?
Nope, sounds good to me. With the inclusion again of no cooking permitted on it.
That was mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay. Cover roll call, please, Ms. Finley.
Okay. Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Artelian.
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Merman.
Yes.
Mr. Cray. Oh, he's muted.
Yes.
Mr. Caslin.
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo.
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Congratulations, Ms. Lee. We wish you all the best and much luck. And when the pickles come there, please let me know because my daughter.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is
Sorry.
364 Lee.
May I drop off?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Tereblin and Oak, 364 Lee Avenue, Block 1002, Lot 54, and they're looking to put a pool in and associated improvements. And I believe their attorney is with us. Is that correct?
Yes, good evening again, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Benjamin Wine, attorney for the applicants, Tarek Bin and Fatma Ak. As you correctly mentioned, this property is located at 364 Lee Avenue, Block 1002, Lot 54. My clients are here seeking, and you'll see in a second when I have my professional share his screen, you'll get a better feel for it. But my clients are seeking to install a kind of standard residential swimming pool on their property. You know, needless to say, the times that we're in right now have somewhat exacerbated the desire, I think, and the need for people to have kind of on-site amenities, especially for young families, including my clients. So the variances that are required are due entirely to the shape of the lot. The lot actually sits on a peninsula, I'll call it. It fronts 3 separate streets. And again, you'll see that momentarily, although it should be in your plan package as well. And the specific variances that are required just due to the placement of the swimming pool are the location in what is considered a front yard, again, as a result of this, the three street envelope, as well as the setback from one of those streets. And that would be where 25 feet would be required from the front yard. And we are proposing 17.4 feet. So unless you have any questions of me, I only have one witness tonight. It's the site engineer who drew the plans with the swimming pool. He's also a professional planner. His name is Matthew Wilder. So I intend to call him. I do have the applicant with me tonight. I don't intend to call him, though I did ask that he be here to answer any questions that perhaps I might not be able to answer if you did have any questions for him. So unless you have any questions of me, may I proceed with my only witness?
You may.
Thank you very much. So Matt, are you on?
Yes.
All right, so I believe the council would like to swear you in.
So if you could just raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Could you please state your name for the record and then provide the board with your qualifications?
Sure. My name is Matthew Wilder, W-I-L-D-E-R. My work address is 130 Central Avenue, Island Heights, New Jersey. So I graduated from Rowan University in 2006 with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. I've worked solely in the field of land development since then. I'm a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. I'm a licensed professional planner in New Jersey. I'm also a certified floodplain manager and a certified municipal engineer. And I've testified probably across 30 boards in the last 5 or 6 years as both a professional engineer and a professional planner.
And will your testimony tonight be engineering or planning?
The testimony I've prepared this evening is for planning, but should any engineering questions arise, I should be able to answer them as well, as I did prepare the plot plan that is in the package this evening.
Okay. Does the board accept the qualifications?
Members of the board, do they have any questions? I think we can accept his qualifications.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm not sure, Matt, do you have the ability to share your screen?
I do.
Okay, great. If you don't mind doing that, if you can bring up the plot plan that was prepared under your guidance and your oversight.
Sure.
Great. So council, if you'd like to, I don't know if you'd like to mark this or not. This was what was submitted to the board, but we're happy if you'd like to mark it as an exhibit because I understand that Zoom is kind of a unusual forum, I'll say.
We can mark it as Exhibit 1. That's fine.
Okay. So thank you. So Mr. Wilder, if you can just go over, because I understand that this was prepared under your oversight, if you can just kind of orient the board as to exactly what we're proposing and where we're proposing it.
Sure. So as Mr. Wand indicated, we are a uniquely shaped property. We do actually have frontage on 3 roadways. So on my plan, you currently see north is up. To the south is Howland Avenue. To the west is Fenway. And to the north is Lee Avenue. What we are proposing this evening is a 15 by 32 foot pool. And I'll zoom in a little bit. North of the existing building. And you'll notice that is within the front yard, if you will, of Lee Avenue. So what is required is 25 feet. And what we are proposing is 17.4 feet setback to Lee Avenue, and then a 11-foot setback to the residential neighbor to the east of the subject parcel.
Sure. And Matt, what prompted you, having designed the site, to place the pool where you did?
Sure. So I guess one of the questions is probably going to be, why are we 11 feet from the eastern property line when we only need to be 10? I just like to build in construction tolerances whenever possible. I very rarely like to design to the minimum setback. I've seen too many instances where 3-4 inches of construction tolerance creates an issue. So what we looked at is, where is the most reasonable place to put the pool? We very quickly indicated or realized that we can't put the pool behind the house. So the minimum setback from the bumped out portion on the eastern side is only 20.7 feet. When you consider the 10-foot setback from that neighboring property, the pool could not be accommodated there. As you go further south towards Howland, you get a little bit more sort of real estate to deal with. But again, you have 27.5 feet of distance between the rear of the structure and the eastern property line. When you consider the 10-foot setback and having some setback from the house, you end up with a pool that would probably be 10, 11 feet wide. It's too small. So what we realize is, when we're going to place it, the property or the structure, the existing dwelling, had the greatest setback from Lee Avenue. So we decided that we could actually, it would be the least intrusive to place the pool north of the existing dwelling and partially within the Lee Avenue right away.
Great. And Matt, will this be visible from the street at all?
It will not be. So I'm sure this board is aware, in 2017, a variance was sought and approved for the construction of a 6-foot fence that included some trellising at the top. This board had enough oversight to actually also require the plantings of evergreen trees along the Lee Avenue frontage. If you've been by the site recently, those trees have actually done fairly well. And, you know, aside from the occasional splashing, anybody walking on Lee Avenue would not know that there's a pool located partially within the front yard.
Okay, great. And my last question for you before we get to the planning, just kind of as to the actual pool itself, As to the size of the pool, when you went over this with the applicant, can you speak a little bit to the size of the proposed pool?
Sure. So again, we're proposing something that's 15 by 32. This is a fairly average size pool that you'll see in residential areas. There are smaller ones, sure. There are bigger ones. This is sort of middle of the road from what we see. My firm, in the past 6-7 months during the pandemic, we've done a tremendous amount of designs for pools. And this is sort of par for the course of what we typically say for a single-family residential home.
Great, thank you. So moving along to the planning, I'd like you to speak a little bit about the justifications, what the relief is that we're seeking, and to go ahead and provide those justifications. Sure.
So again, the minimum required front yard setback is 25 feet, and we are proposing 17.4 feet to Lee Avenue. The board previously made a determination during the fence approval that this property is subject to a hardship, and the hardship being that it fronts on 3 roadways. So 40:55D 70C1C states that this board can grant a variance by reason of an extraordinary and exceptional situation uniquely affecting a specific piece of property. And it furthermore goes on to state that this relief would be based on the fact that strict application of any regulation would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to, or exceptional and undue hardship upon the developer of such a property. As I sort of guided you through the pool placement, there's really there's no room to place a pool on this site that would be fully conforming. So what we tried to do is place it in a location that would be most conforming, if you will. So due to the fact that the property fronts on or has 3 roadway frontages and it's uniquely shaped, the hardship, in my opinion, is clearly evident. Now, although I do believe it's a pretty clear case of a hardship variance, I do acknowledge that sometimes the C2 variance criteria, or what's commonly referred to as the flexible variance criteria, does provide a little bit more flexibility. So 40:55D 70C2 states where an appeal relating to a property would advance the municipal land use law, and furthermore, the benefits of the deviation substantially outweigh the detriment, a variance can be granted. I always want to address the detriment. I don't believe there's any detriment associated with this application. You have a privacy fence that was previously granted a variance that included the requirement for the planting of evergreens. There is a visual buffer that anyone walking on Lee Avenue would not be aware of the fact that this pool is located partially within a front yard. The pool location complies with the minimum setback to the neighboring property, and the site as a whole is compliant with the impervious coverage limit. So for those reasons, I don't see any detriment to the granting of the variance. However, I do believe goal G of the municipal land use law is advanced, and that is to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of uses. As Mr. Wine indicated, this is a pretty customary accessory use to a residential property. We're proposing a pool to support a single family home. As I sort of had indicated, and Mr. Wine had also pointed out, from the last 8 months have certainly changed the way of life currently, but I think people have evaluated their own properties to determine if they want to increase the amenity space on their property. And we've seen a tremendous uptick in people doing additions to homes, sheds, pools. So I believe that goal G of the municipal land use law is advanced through this application. And then just very quickly, although I believe we advanced goal G of the MLUL, I do not believe that granting of the variances we're seeking tonight would impair the intent or purpose of the zone plan or the zoning ordinance. And that really is based on the fact of just how uniquely shaped this property is, and the fact that it fronts on 3 roads and sort of exists as a peninsula, as Mr. Wine had indicated.
Thank you, Matt. So I have no further questions for my witness at this time, but certainly he's open to any questions from the board or public.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to ask our planner to weigh in. Tom?
Sure. So thank you for the thorough testimony, Mr. Wilder. I do have a few questions, comments. One thing I just want to throw out there, more of a comment, is that while I think the board fully understands the COVID situation and is sympathetic to that, I don't think they can necessarily consider the temporary nature, or I guess perceived temporary nature of the situation as granting a variance that will run with the property. Not that there aren't any other merits to the case, but I just want to put that aside because we've heard that before, and I've heard that in other places. And I think we just kind of have to, we hear it, but we might have to toss that aside for the sake of the variance relief. I did have a question with regard to the site plan itself. There's sort of a hatched area that talks about a deed overlap. Can you clarify what's going on there?
Sure. So what you'll notice is that we are not showing that deed overlap as part of our property. So I'll sort of give the 30,000-foot flyover best I can. So there's something called junior and senior rights when you're doing subdivisions and surveys. And basically what it means is as you go down the road, the last property, if you will, or the last created property gets whatever is left. If there had been an error or an omission in a prior deed and lot lines were created and they were created in error, you don't go back and revisit that. So based upon our research, the deed for the area, based on timing that deeds were recorded and subdivisions were approved, there's a deed overlap where this property's deed treats it as if it has an additional 10 feet of property, whereas it actually does not because of junior and senior rights and the timing of approvals and subdivisions. So, which is the reason we are excluding that entirely from this application. We are treating it as if that land is not part of our property because it is not due to the nature of the approvals.
Okay, and that's 100% certain. That's clear that it's definitely not. There's no chance of that even being included in the parcel at all under any circumstance. Is that fair to say?
That is my understanding. That's correct. Based on the research I've done, yes.
Okay. In your testimony, you talked about other possible or alternative locations for the pool. If you could humor me, if you took the pool as it's configured 15 by 32 and were to place it, let's say, in the southeast corner of the yard that's fenced in, sort of by where the existing patio is, let's say. Now, I understand it wouldn't be conforming in terms that, I'm sorry, my mouse isn't active, but yeah, if you were to the right of the mouse, essentially, right, that area, yeah. Let's say if the board was inclined or sort of as a better planning alternative to give you a more generous setback from that side lot line in preference of the pool there, is it possible to fit a pool there, or is that a feasible alternative for a pool?
Sure. So we have 27.5 feet available to us, yeah, in that area. So the pool is 15 feet. So that would give us 12.5 feet to potentially divide along the eastern side and up against the house. So could a pool be accommodated there with variance relief to the residential to the east? It could be. That would essentially sort of occupy the entire area. You may have to relocate the air conditioning units, mm-hmm, and you'd be walking out of the house and the pool would be sort of right there. So while I do believe that would be an alternative, I think the location that we're proposing is probably a better location than that would be.
All right. I don't know, the board, I'm sure, will have comments about different aspects of this. Can you go over, it looks like there's some grading going on in the vicinity, sure, of the pool and a retaining wall. Can you give us an overview of what's going on there, yeah, and how tall the wall will be?
Yeah, so no retaining walls proposed. What we're showing around the pool is sort of just the coping. Mm-hmm. And then as you expand further out, we're showing the concrete surround for the pool. So as of right now, the way that everything grades out is this is sort of a high point back here where the door is in the rear of the home, and you sort of get, you get flow and drainage going towards Lee Avenue and also towards Howland. So we're essentially mimicking that with our proposed design. We're going to send water around the pool and out to Lee Avenue.
What then is that line to the north of the pool? It has the number 54 on it and cuts through the fence.
Sure.
What
so
is that line?
That is an elevation contour. So what we're saying is we're going to shape the land in this location to be at elevation 54.
Got it. Trying to think if I have any questions. So I appreciate your planning testimony. you know, I understand from the negative criteria standpoint, again, whether or not there are any substantial detriments to the public good that are generated from this, that there is some element of screening. I'm not 100% sold that there is no impact to the intent and purpose of the master plan and zoning ordinance, but again, I do understand the physical attributes of the property, that there are 3 front yards in this case. So I would ask the question, how does this property differ from the typical corner lot in River Edge, so that if the board were to grant a variance here, that this lot in particular presents a unique situation, that they wouldn't be in this position to have to grant similar relief for other corner lots, granted that every application rests on its own merits, but.
Sure. So, I mean, the biggest difference would be that a traditional corner lot would have 2 yards that are required to be 25 feet because a pool can't be closer than 25 feet to a street, and the remaining yards would have to be 10-foot setback. So because this property is encumbered by 3 streets, we have 3 25-foot setbacks and 1 10-foot setback. So if this was a traditional corner lot and the property fronted on Howland and Fenway, we would actually be compliant with the rear yard setback, if you will, since 10 feet is required. But because we are a corner lot and then some, we have 3 25-foot setbacks. So that is sort of where I believe the discrepancy exists between a traditional corner lot and the lot that we're dealing with tonight.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for now.
Okay. I'm going to start calling on members of the board. I'll start with Mr. Esposito.
I'm good, thank you.
And Mr. Gibbons.
I just wanted to clarify here. So I guess we're talking the northwest corner of the proposed pool. So that goes past, or that, I guess that contoured land that you just spoke of, that goes past the fencing, correct?
We're going to do a little bit of regrading to accommodate the pool surround. That's correct.
Okay, so does that fence have to be changed at this point, or that's kind of fits in with what?
It sort of fits in. I mean, realistically, what we're proposing to do is raise the grade in the area around 3 inches, 4 inches to get a flat patio area. I don't envision any parts of the fence having to be removed, but in the event that a panel has to be removed, it would be removed, the grading done, and then the panel replaced.
Okay, and how much actual concrete is around this pool? It doesn't look like much.
It's not. So we're showing 4 feet of concrete surrounding it right now.
Okay. And this entire pool area is completely enclosed with fencing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's existing fencing out there now.
Yeah, no, I know. There's just so many lines, it's hard to tell exactly where the fencing is. So it goes around basically the entire house, right?
That's correct.
Okay. That's it for now.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Caslin.
So I just have a couple of questions. I just want to make sure I'm looking at, so I've got a set of plans here, a set of drawings that show slightly different dimensions. And I don't know if this is a revised set that's been submitted. So the one we're looking at now shows the setback from the easterly property line at 11 feet. And I've got a version here that shows it as 14 feet. And similarly, the setback measurement from Lee Avenue, which on your plan here is 17.4. I've got one at 17 feet. And it looks like the dimensions of the pool are slightly different too. So,
Mr. Caslin, I'll just respond to that. I am not sure which particular one you're looking at. I do apologize if there's a discrepancy. I don't recall submitting anything like that, but if it's in your hands, clearly it exists. But nevertheless, all right, it's hard to tell, but nevertheless, the plan before you here is the plan that we are proposing.
No, I don't see a revision date on anything either. Okay, all right, so just get that clear.
Yeah, I mean, I'll if you'd like, I can check my digital notes here and see if there was anything else, but this is what is being proposed.
And your application said 16.4 feet for the setback. Okay. What is the change in the grade between your property and the property to the east? Is there a difference in grade?
I'm not certain of what the elevation is. from my review of sort of pictures from when we had done the survey, there's not a significant grade change, but I don't have the specifics of exactly what the difference is.
Okay. Is that property higher or lower than yours, or is it close in line?
I think it's close in line.
Okay.
And again, the setback that we're proposing on the eastern side, we can ensure that we can grade around the pool without having any negative impact on the adjoining property owner.
No further questions. Thank you.
This is Tom Barons, the planner. If I could just chime in real quick. So Mr. Caslin actually reminded me of something. So while the setback dimensions are shown as 17.4, I took the approximate approximate setback measurement from the sort of outer portion of the coping, because the ordinance definition or ordinance requirement measures pools from the outer part of the wall. So wherever that may be, just to clarify that point, that it wouldn't be the inner part of the pool wall, but rather the outer part of the pool wall. So in considering the setbacks, and for your resolution, just to get that right.
Sure. Actually, that's a good question. So Mr. Wilder, to Mr. Barron's point, the 17.4 is to what portion?
It is to the water's edge, and I apologize. I certainly missed that caveat in the ordinance. So it would be to the water's edge, and typically the coping is 3 inches. So we would be proposing, I guess, then 17.1 feet to Lee Avenue, to the outside of the pool coping.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Barons, thank you for that clarification. That would certainly not be something we'd want to deal with at a later point if it did not line up. So I appreciate that.
Mr. Caslin?
No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. To that note, any time we have an approval of something along these lines, it'll of course be subject to review by our engineer to make sure that there's no additional runoff to the neighbor's properties. And of course, if he makes recommendations, it'll become part and parcel of the approval that you get this evening. I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Absolutely. And I would stipulate, I mean, without knowing what Mr. Barons might come up with later, but I would say that I would stipulate to working with Mr. Barons to ensure that he has no concerns.
Well, Mr. Costa is actually our engineer.
Oh, so, I'm sorry. Oh, yep. My apologies. So Mr. Costa, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So let's see. We went to, Mr. Craig?
Oh, you're muted, I believe.
Yes, I was. Thank you. I guess one simple question. The same impact on the measurement to the water versus the coping, does that affect your rear yard setback as well, the 11 foot?
It does. It would go down from 11 to 10.7.
Okay. Okay, that's it.
Mr. Bartoloni?
No questions.
Okay. Then I'm going to go to Mr. Merman.
Yes. Question, Mr. Wilder. If we look at what is the fenced rear yard, the total area within that fencing, that includes the fencing along Lee, the piece along Fenway, and the piece along Howland, and the contiguous property. If we just look at that area, what would be your estimate of the new pool installation of the pool and the 4-foot wide decking? What would be your estimation or the percentage of reduction of that rear yard area within the fencing?
So the question is, within the fenced-in area, what percentage of the pool and concrete occupy?
No. What would be the reduction of the total area that's there now? Available area of greenery that let's put it that way, available area of greenery that's common right now.
So I certainly could attempt to calculate it quickly if I had to give
Just a rough estimate.
Right. If I had to give it the eyeball test, I would say it looks to occupy maybe about a quarter of the fenced area in what we're proposing.
I think it might be closer to 50 in my estimation, but nevertheless, it is a very large amount of area, correct?
It does occupy a portion of the fenced-in area. That's correct.
A large portion.
Yeah. Again, I don't have the exact number. If you think it's closer to 50%, then sure, that would be a somewhat significant portion.
Okay. As you testify, back in 2017, when we had the fence application, I recall your client, your applicant, justifying the location of the Lee Avenue fence because he wanted to have an enclosed yard for his children and for their safety and for their ability to have a play area. This amount of reduction of play area by the pool kind of defeats his prior testimony. All right. And basically, I think that when I look at your whole application here with what's going on in that rear yard, I'm going to state to you point blank that I cannot support this application with for the setback variance and the resulting overdeveloped fenced rear yard condition. So that's my opinion, and that's where I stand.
So, Mr. Merman, I'll comment on that. I appreciate your candor, and certainly, obviously, I believe that you were present. I was not present, but I believe that you were present 3 years ago based on my review of the resolution. And so I do appreciate you bringing that up. In my conversations with the client, and I guess what Mr. Wilder could speak to is the area perhaps behind the house that is still quote unquote a green space play area and significant room to play. But aside from that, the purpose of the pool in and of itself could be qualified as a play area, so to speak. You know, my clients do have a family with 3 children, and while I know that a variance certainly is related to the property and not the individuals, as was the fence variance that was granted back then, which obviously a reason could not have been, so to speak, a play area, but it certainly came up. I think what I'm trying to get at is that it's my client's belief, and they would not be going forward with this if they had any feeling that their children wouldn't have enough room to play in their yard. That's obviously, you know, of great importance to them. And the pool in and of itself functions as another area to play, so to speak. And again, I would just defer and suggest that the applicant is proposing to do this because they feel that it's a significant benefit to their family.
My response would be, I personally think after reviewing this that you're trying to shoehorn in a pool in a very limited backyard and creating an undersized situation.
And I appreciate your candor, and I hope that Mr. Wilder's testimony, you know, overcomes that burden.
Mr. Chairman, that's all the comments I have.
Okay, we'll go to Councilman Kanigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The concrete around the pool, that's going to be buttressing or touching the fence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So I'm still having trouble understanding the elevation, that little swoop around that line that says 54. Why does it go beyond the fence?
Why does the contour go beyond the fence?
Yeah.
It goes beyond the fence to accommodate the fact that the concrete is going to essentially be flat. So right now, as you go from south to north towards Lee, there is some change in grade of the property. So when you install the pool and the concrete's around, it's generally going to be flat. So because it's going to be flat, we need to do a little bit of grading beyond the fence to ensure that the concrete surround is flat and at relatively the same elevation as the pool itself.
So earlier you seemed to equivocate on the idea of whether the fence would have to be removed to accomplish that goal. You're going to have to remove the fence to accomplish that goal, right?
again, it appears that you might have to remove a panel or two to accommodate the additional grading. But again, like I said, we're talking, inches. We're not talking that the grade would be changing, several feet.
I think that goes to Mr. Merman's points, though. The fact that we're squabbling over inches is indicative of how big this pool is that's going into this tight space. Has there been any consideration to maybe a smaller pool?
Sure. So, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Wilder.
I was going to say, I can't speak to that. When we were approached by the client, this is the pool that they had shared with us. So we tried to position this pool in a location where we thought it most worked with the site, considering the setbacks.
You testified earlier that your firm has done a lot of pools in the past 7 months, right? Designed a lot of pools.
Absolutely.
Is 15 the minimum?
So realistically speaking, I would say the minimum that we see is 12.5 feet. And that is, we see those on pretty much on lagoon lots in Monmouth and Ocean County, where the lot is 5,000 square feet, and the house is pushed up against the rear setback, and you're positioning a pool between a bulkhead and a home. So we do see some pools as narrow as 12.5 feet.
So where the space doesn't really lend itself to a 15 by 32 pool, that's where you would consider a smaller pool.
So the issue we have with lagoon lots in Monmouth and Ocean County is there's required separations where you can't construct due to the location of a bulkhead. So you actually have a physical constraint where you can't encroach a certain distance because of the tieback for the dead men for the bulkhead. So in this situation, the physical constraint is that we have a setback requirement. There's not a physical prohibition that we can't construct the pool. So
well, it might as well be a physical prohibition. It's just that we can move this physical prohibition, but you're still not answering my question as to whether a 12-foot or a 13-foot pool might fit better.
A 12 or 13-foot pool would have a greater setback to Lee Avenue.
Thank you. No more questions.
Mayor Papaleo.
I would have to agree that I think the current proposed pool appears to be too large for the space. As Mr. Merman said, a shoehorn, and as Councilman Canigo said, the 15 by 32 seems to be a little excessive for this space. So my question is, would the homeowner be open to proposing a smaller pool?
Sure, and I'll answer that, but I definitely would like to, if it's okay with you, because I think I hear where the board is going towards this, if I can take 2 minutes and just call my client and ask him that exact question, see what's available, and if we can do that, then I do understand, especially Mr. Merman and the councilman and the mayor's comments, so if you're okay with a 2-minute break, I can make that phone call and find out.
2 minutes. Because we have a pretty full agenda. Motion to adjourn for a 2-minute break. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All
second.
All right. Any opposed, abstain? Okay, 2 minutes.
Okay, for the purpose of the record, I am now going to be pausing the record, and Mr. Arkelian, when we return, you need to just give me a 10 to 15 seconds notice, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
So I'm pausing the recording. Activating the recording.
It is 8:55 p.m. on Wednesday. We are back from our recess, and I believe everybody's present. Ms. Stinley, do we need to do a roll call?
We can do a roll call. That's fine.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
Here.
Mr. Arkelian.
Here.
Ms. Boland is absent. Mr. Bartoloni.
Here.
Mr. Merman.
Here.
Mr. Grasso. Oh, he's absent today. Mr. Cray.
Here.
Mr. Caslin.
Here.
Councilman Canigo.
Here.
Mr. Gibbons.
Here.
And Mr. Esposito.
Here.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, so when we left off, there was some concern about the size of the pool. the applicant and his attorney were going to discuss some of the questions and comments the board had. So I'll turn it back over to the applicant's attorney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I spoke with my client and with my engineer. I really stretched those 2 minutes. So what we can do and what I've confirmed is that since these are standard sized pools, so we can't, it's not just free form in a sense of being able to shave off a foot here or a foot there. We can drop down to the next size, which would, instead of 15 by 32, it would be 15 by 28. And I'm going to ask Mr. Wilder to reshare the screen if he may, and I'll have him go over what that would do. And I hope that would alleviate Mr. Merman's and the mayor's and the councilman's concerns. So Mr. Wilder, if we were to convert this to a 15 by 28, which I know it on paper, it's just the length, but then we were to now slide it over towards the east to be at 10 feet where you're permitted from the sides, where effectively we'd be shifting the pool further out of that Lee Avenue setback, if that makes sense. So Mr. Wilder, can you speak to what that would look like?
Sure. So essentially what we would do is we would shift it the 0.7 feet to the east so that the outside of the coping was exactly at 10 feet. And we would reduce the length from 32 to 28 feet. That would have a resultant setback to Lee Avenue of 19 feet. So we would be increasing the setback from 17.4 feet to 19 feet. And I also think that change with the additional 1.5 feet and the shifting and the shift over would likely require us to not touch the existing fence. We should be able to accommodate our improvement without any impact to that existing fence.
Right, and Mr. Wilder, so just to confirm, so that you said that was, I missed the number, it's 1.9 feet that it would give you further setback from Lee Avenue, is that correct? From what we are currently proposing?
Correct, so outside of coping, it's about 17.1 inches, the current proposal. When we shift it and shorten it, we would go from 17.1 to 19.0.
Okay, great. So I will then ask the question of I guess the board members who brought this up. Is that change, would that be an appropriate way to kind of, I guess, change and shift this application in a way that perhaps speaks to some of your concerns?
Okay. We've heard from the applicant and his attorney changes. We were up to Mr. I'm going to give everybody another chance to speak on this, but we were up to our Mayor Papaleo. Mayor, did you want to continue?
I don't want to continue at this moment. I want to wait for Mr. Merman. I know that Mr. Esposito is probably next in line. So why don't we finish the round and then come back to Mr. Merman and the council president and then myself, if that would be okay with you.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to let everybody have an opportunity to speak on this if they want to. But yes, being that Mr. Merman was the one that brought it up, I'm going to go to Mr. Merman at this point.
Okay, Dick Merman speaking here. Mr. Wilder, my original conversation initiated a question as to the rough percentage of the yard that was being consumed by this installation. I'm going to revisit that question and ask you, with the minor reduction that you're proposing, what significant amount, if any, would that reduction be?
So by reducing the width of the pool by 4 feet, we would reduce
the length.
Oh, the length, excuse me, the length by 4 feet from 32 to 28. You'd reduce it by 15 feet as well. So you'd have a 60 square foot reduction.
All right. So my opinion remains that amount of reduction is basically de minimis. It's minor. It's nothing. We still have the same situation, and my opinion remains the same, that you're shoehorning.
Okay. Councilman Canigo. Council President Canigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you taking time out and speaking to your client counsel, and I have no further questions right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
No, I have no further questions at this time.
Okay. I'm kind of torn between Mr. Merman's comments and what Mr. Merman had to say. I do remember this application. I was also present at that meeting, and I remember the importance of having play space was paramount to the applicant as far as the fencing and so forth were concerned. But in the same token, I certainly understand somebody wanting to improve their property with a pool. I don't think a pool necessarily is detrimental to anything with the borough. I think that as long as it's our engineer is okay with any kind of additional runoff that would incur with the additional improvement, I personally think in this particular case, the property rights of the owner are probably more important than the detriment to the addition of a pool that, quite honestly, nobody's going to know is there unless they're invited in. So those are my comments. And I'll ask if anybody else within the board has any comments at this point.
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
If we're going to consider allowing the 15 by 28, I would also ask that we consider allowing the 15 by 32 so that we can get a vote on both. Honestly, I don't know that the 60 square foot difference, as Mr. Merman pointed out, is significant enough so that if we're going to allow him to put in this pool, then, you know, let him do laps, let his kids do laps in the pool. And a 32-foot pool at that point is going to be, you know, much better for that regard. So I suggest that we take a vote on both of them if they were going to take this vote, and let the chips fall where they may. There's a lot of green grass in this area too, and we should consider that. And I'm not talking just about the fenced-in area, but obviously in this entire property. That's my thought.
Okay. So I think the proper way to do this would be when it comes time for the call for a vote and the call for a motion, we'll have whoever makes the motion will make the motion on the specific pool size, and we'll vote on that. And then if that does not pass, I'll entertain a motion for the different pool size, and we'll go that route to see if that passes. Is that Councilman? Is that okay?
Yes, that sounds fine.
Sound appropriate? Okay. At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to open to the public.
Mr. Arkalian, you still haven't called on Mr. Esposito, and as you stated at the beginning of the meeting, he is a voting member of the...
I'm sorry. Mr. Esposito, didn't I call on you in the beginning?
In the beginning.
Yeah. Did I call on? Or I missed you?
Okay.
I
Okay,
think
go ahead.
you missed him for this particular approval.
Sorry, I apologize. Mr.
No
Esposito.
problem.
Yes.
Did you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay. And Mr. Gibbons, I did call on you as well, right?
Yes, I had my time to ask a question.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm working off a list here, so I apologize if I skipped over anybody. I think I have everybody now. So I'd like to entertain a motion open to the public.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstain? Mayor, do you see anybody from the public?
Problem is, I can't see as long as the presentation's going, so I need.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Wilder, can you pull that down? There you go.
Okay. There are no members of the public, only panelists.
Seeing that there's no members to the public, can I have a motion to close the meeting to the public?
So moved. Gibbons.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, at this point, I will entertain, anybody else have anything, any questions before we move forward on a motion?
Yeah, if I may just sum up, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So I would just, first of all, like to thank the board, especially during this time and all the technical issues that come up, but I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody's time. I would just ask that I know how we're going to proceed with potentially up to 2 separate motions here, I would ask that favorably to the council president's point, I think that the added pool space is a greater benefit than the extra 60 square feet, but I certainly defer to the board's position and feeling and comments that have been taken into consideration. So with that in mind, I would ask you first and foremost, please to go ahead and approve what was originally proposed, and if that is not the case, then to at least approve the modified proposal that we came up with a little bit later. So thank you for your time, everybody.
Okay. So I think the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to ask the board to entertain a motion on the original application as written, with the inclusion of the things that we asked for, including the review by the borough engineer for any water runoff.
Absolutely.
Do I have a motion?
I think that's fine. Mr. Chairman, if I just might ask council, would the way to do that be to poll the board formally or to actually entertain a motion on that?
Ms. Finley?
We could do a poll if you'd like, but
yeah, I think
we can do a roll call vote is fine as well. Okay. And then if the motion fails, then the board can entertain a second motion.
I'm good with that.
So the motion I'm looking for now on this application is a motion to approve it based on the original application with the original pool size. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I just want to clarify with the original application, what the setback on Lee Road is. It 17.1?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Finley, a roll call on the motion.
Okay. Councilman Kanigo was the motion, and the second, I missed the second.
Mr. Bartley.
Okay.
Yeah, I made the second.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
No.
Mr. Arkelian?
I am going to say yes.
Okay. Mr. Bartoloni?
Yes.
Mr. Merman?
No.
Mr. Cray?
Yes.
Mr. Caslin?
No.
Councilman Kinigo?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right.
All right. Seeing no need for the second motion, I want to congratulate the applicant and wish you the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, everybody, for your time, and good luck with the rest of the meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Yep. Have a good night.
Good night.
So it's unusual the board is not a unanimous vote. However, it's good that we can all join in and voice our own opinions. And this is our town, and they're our neighbors, and we try to do the best we can. So I want to thank the board for working so hard on this application. I know it wasn't easy. Moving on, we're going to be on the adoption of the master plan amendment for the 2020 housing element and fair housing share plan. And we're going to turn it over to our planner, Mr. Tom Behrens. Tom?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Behrens, Borough Planner. As this board has been involved in the borough's third round affordable housing process, we are nearing the end of what's called the compliance phase in addressing the borough's third round affordable housing obligations. The borough has its next compliance hearing with the court on October 21st, and there are just a few remaining compliance requirements. 3 of them are on the agenda for this evening. One includes the document the chairman just mentioned, which is an amendment, a master plan amendment to the 2020 housing element and fair share plan. So it's an amendment to the document that this board adopted earlier this year. And what this document does is it provides what's called the site suitability analysis for the borough's several affordable housing mechanisms, and it was a requirement of the court. So at our last compliance hearing in July, this was a request by the court special master. And so we prepared it accordingly. And really what it does, again, it's an amendment to the master plan and the housing element, which is an element of the borough's master plan. It provides a brief overview of the borough's fair share plan, which is further elaborated in the full housing element document. And it goes through the various criteria for each of 3 sites, including the New Bridge Landing Station redevelopment area, Kinder Kamak redevelopment area, and the New Bridge Road overlay zone. And in accordance with the regulatory criteria, there are 4 specific components that have to be addressed for each site. One has to do with whether the site's approvable, available, developable, or suitable. And we did that analysis, or gave an overview for each of those 3 sites. And we concluded that, in fact, all of those 3 sites are available, approvable, developable, and suitable in accordance with the criteria. So if the board has any questions, I can certainly entertain them. Otherwise, if the board is amenable to this document, it can be adopted as an amendment to the housing plan.
All right, so again, because we're doing this electronically and I don't have everybody speaking up at once, I'm going to call on the members individually to weigh in first, and then we'll have a second round real quick of whoever wants to chime in afterwards. So I'll start with Mr. Esposito. Do you have any questions, comments?
None at this time.
Mr. Gibbons?
None at this time as well. Thank you.
Mr. Caslin?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Cray?
Yeah, one question. Now, are we just talking about the amendment or about the redevelopment plans as well?
Only the amendment document.
Okay, yeah, no questions about the amendment.
So that goes to Mr. Merman.
No comments.
Then we go to Mr. Bartoloni.
No comments.
Then we go to Council President Caningo.
Nothing. Thank you, Chairman.
Then we go to Mayor Papaleo.
No, thank you.
Okay. I myself, the only comment I'll make is I know this has been a lot of work for our planner. I know that it's been difficult at times because of dealing with the fair housing and dealing with the judge and so forth. I know the council has worked very hard on this as well. And I know that we're kind of under the gun here to get this get this done. So that's the only comment I have. I'd like to entertain a motion open to the public.
So moved.
So do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? And I believe that there's nobody here from the public. Is that correct, Mayor?
No one's here.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to close to the public.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Does anybody have questions, comments, concerned on this report from our planner? Not. Entertain a motion for adoption.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that the board accept and approve the master plan amendment to 2020 housing element and fair share plan. The site suitability analysis dated September 24th, 2020, as prepared by Burgess Associates.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any questions? Anybody have any questions on the motion? Ms. Stinley, can I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, folks. Next up is the master plan consistency review for the 2020 Newbridge Landing Station redevelopment plan. As you may or may not know, if you've been on board for a while, you know that this thing's been kicking around for a real long time. It's probably a difficult development to accomplish with the requirements from New Jersey Transit. Be that as it may, we did have to include this into our redevelopment plan. So I'm going to ask, again, our planner to lead off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Tom Behrens, Borough Planner with Burgess Associates. The document you should have received is entitled the Newbridge Landing Station Redevelopment Plan, dated September 17th, 2020. The site, the redevelopment area itself encompasses block 1411 lots 1.01 and 1.02, as well as block 1412 lots 1, 2, and 3. As I'm sure the board is well aware, this site is developed by surface parking used for commuters utilizing the Newbridge Landing train station, partially owned by the borough and partially owned by NJ Transit, and totals about 3.5 acres in size, and is generally bisected in half by the rail corridor itself. It was designated as a redevelopment area by the Borough Council in 2005, and a prior redevelopment plan for the site was prepared and adopted in 2007, which included a mixed-use concept for the site up to about 12 stories and a residential density of 34 units per acre, which translates to about 130 units. This plan, meaning the 2007 plan, was rescinded by the council in June 2018, recognizing that the plan had not come to fruition in over 10 years, and to give the borough an opportunity to review the area and also address its third round affordable housing obligations. So this new plan has been prepared in accordance with the local housing and redevelopment law. As I mentioned, the site exists as a surface parking lot with not even really a train station, but a train stop that's a platform with sort of a bus stop-like shelter. The LRHL, or local redevelopment housing law, has several requirements for redevelopment plan, as well as the process, and it includes that the plan be consistent with the borough's other plans, as well as those of surrounding municipalities. This particular plan provides what really is a conceptual and flexible framework for the development of the site. It contemplates, again, a mixed-use, transit-oriented development similar to the 2007 plan, albeit on a smaller scale. The residential density that was agreed to in negotiating terms with Fair Share Housing Center is 25 units per acre. And there are a number of other non-residential uses permitted on the site, including retail, or other commercial and office uses, as well as a hotel use. And there is a required 20% affordable housing set aside. There is a provision requiring some element of a train station and public parking facility. Again, it's owned by NJ Transit. This has been a requirement of theirs in order to have anything potentially developed there in the future. You know what, why don't I share my screen and I could throw up the concept here, so you can look at what I'm talking about. Can everyone see that clearly enough?
Yep.
There we go. Okay. So on the westerly portion of the site, we have a mixed-use building and somewhat of a train station facility. It's shown as a platform. It could be a formal station building if one were desired. There's also a sort of drop-off loop that enters from Kinderkamak Road, traverses the site north, and as well as on-street parking, some streetscape amenities, and so forth. The building itself is contemplated at 4 stories high. There's a bit of a sort of a public amenity here. On the easterly portion of the site, we have the public or shared parking facility that we've envisioned at 4, or I think it's at 5 levels even. Again, primarily to accommodate the extensive public parking. And we've conceptually provided that the parking facility is wrapped by a multifamily component, so that it doesn't necessarily look like a parking deck from the surrounding environment. And it's been discussed over time, but we threw it in this concept plan or redevelopment plan illustration that there could possibly be a sky bridge that connects over the railway, connecting the public parking facility and other building on the westerly portion of the site. There are a number of accessory uses and features that are permitted and typical of this type of development. In general, while the site definitely has its constraints and hurdles to overcome, I think it is generally perceived as that it could be a catalyst for the area when and if it ever does get developed. And in terms of satisfying or meeting the master plan consistency, the technical criteria is that it's not inconsistent with the master plan, which it is definitely not. It is not inconsistent with the master plan, and it rather is very much consistent with the master plan in that it satisfies a number of the master plan's goals and objectives. This area in particular has been identified since at least 1971 for some level of transit-oriented development, recognizing the location of the train station, bus service, and this Newbridge Landing area occurring sort of at a crossroads between a number of towns. And those goals and objectives generally pertain to, one, the satisfaction of the borough's affordable housing requirements and a diversity of housing options, to provide for public transportation alternatives and reduce vehicular congestion, again, via a transit-oriented development, as well as providing investment in an underutilized commercial zoning district in the borough. So again, from that standpoint, this plan is in many ways consistent with the borough's master plan goals and objectives. So at this point, and I know I glossed over a lot of the details in terms of the bulk requirements and some other things in the plan. So if there are any specific questions, I would be glad to address any of those.
Thanks, Tom. You want to, leave the plan up for now.
Yep.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Gibbons?
No, it's thank you very much, Tom and associates for all you're doing to get this done. But looks good.
Mr. Caslin? Chris?
Yep. Yeah, Tom. Just one question: Is the parking structure that's for both buildings? I take it, right? There's no underground parking under the buildings themselves, correct? Is that right?
Correct. The structure would be the only parking. There is none provided on the westerly portion, and part of that has to do with the area being partially located in a floodplain. I don't think you could go much lower. So the deck provides, I believe it's 5 levels, totaling about, again, conceptually 459 parking spaces, which takes into account the existing surface parking, which is just under 300 spaces, plus the the actual uses on the site. And again, that would be negotiated at a future point with NJ Transit, the borough, and any prospective developer is typically how the process works.
And just one other question. Was there any thought or consideration or feasibility, even, and this may be something that Transit has to opine upon, but being able to sort of build over the track right of way so that you have more?
It's something that could be negotiated. Technically, I think when this redevelopment area was created, it only includes the blocks and lots mentioned, and I don't think it necessarily encompasses the rail corridor. Okay. I think, and it may be that turns out to be a good idea, that could happen. I just don't know if it was implemented in a way that we could do it at the moment. But again, we conceptually have the Sky Bridge, but could you theoretically build over the rail station, the rail corridor? The answer is yes, but you would need that NJ Transit approval for the air rights and possibly some tweaking to the redevelopment area.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Caslin. Mr. Merman.
Yes, Tom, I think you did a great job in a time constraint that you had. I had 2 quick areas that I looked at. One was the setbacks for the bulk requirements, and I like what I see. One of my main concerns over there was signage. And I wanted to make sure, or at least in this document, we didn't get another self-standing neon sign that the Jersey Trade had put on their property either side of Route 4. And when I look at your page 25, I see that, and I'll read the sentence, freestanding or monument signs freestanding signs shall be prohibited except for directional traffic. And I think that's a key element in this. So I think you did a wonderful job, and I endorse this document.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Merman. Mr. Bartoloni? Alphonse?
I think that he's muted right now.
Sorry. No, I'm okay.
Okay. Then we go to Councilman Caningo.
So I need that strict thing.
Just thank you, Tom, for your hard work on this. I know the time constraints were brutal, and you've excelled as usual. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your assistance with this.
Mayor Papaleo.
Yes, I agree. Great job. Thank you, Tom, and thank you to your associates. As always, very professional, very well done.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. My comments are what I said in the beginning. It's a tough site. It's going to be very difficult to get anything done there. But that said, I agree with both the council president and the mayor. Tom, as always, has stepped up to the plate, shined for us, and it's nice having a homegrown member of our board as our planner. So I thank you. I'll entertain a motion to open to the public.
We do not have to open this to the public.
We don't.
I did have a question. I did have a question or two. I think you skipped me. Just for kind of curiosity, when we look at the multifamily residential through the two buildings, is there a kind of a number that we, as far as what the population in the two buildings could be?
So I'll try to arrive there. So it's about a 3.5 acre site, and the permitted density is 25 units per acre, which translates to about 95 units per acre. The 3.5 acres is approximate, but it's about 95 residential units, the majority of which in this type of environment would be studios, 1 and 2 bedroom units. The caveat to which would be the affordable units. There's a required spread between 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the multifamily multipliers that I'm aware of, I mean, you'd probably average probably less than 2 people per unit. So you might be talking, let's say you did even 2, I mean, at most 200 people, probably few school children, I would imagine, based on the type of development. We often distinguish, it does vary by town and by project, granted, and I haven't really done a full analysis on it, but we find that there are often more school kids in, let's say, a garden apartment setting versus something like this, which don't really lend itself to children in play space and outdoor spaces. But again, there are anomalies and so forth, but those are the general demographics of something like this.
All right, so it would basically 200 plus or minus. Okay.
I think that's a fair estimate, yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, seeing that we don't have to open to the public, I'll entertain a motion for the adoption of this, of the plan.
Just to interject briefly, there have to be 2 votes. One vote on the consistency that this plan is not inconsistent with the master plan, and then a second vote for the resolution that will be our report that will be delivered to the council. And I distributed the or Ed distributed the resolutions to everyone, so you should have one. This is for New Bridge Landing.
Okay, so the first motion I'll entertain is that this plan is not inconsistent with the master plan. Do I have a motion on that?
So made, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, and then one for the resolution.
I'm looking for a motion to accept the plan and accept the resolution as was distributed.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair. Merman.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up is the master plan consistency review of the 2020 Kindermack Road redevelopment plan. And I'll hand it over to our planner, Tom Behrens.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. So the board should have received the Kindermack Road redevelopment plan dated September 17th, 2020. The plan area the redevelopment area encompasses block 1413 lots 1, 2.01, 4, and 5. Tax records indicate that lots 2.01 and 4 have been merged, but for the purposes of clarity, I've kept them separate for this purpose. And the overall site is a little bit less than 1 acre, and it is privately held by several different entities, or at least legal entities. This site was designated an area in need of redevelopment by the Borough Council in 2006. A prior redevelopment plan had been prepared in 2008, which allowed for a multifamily development totaling 75 units at about 78 units per acre in about an 8-story building. This plan was rescinded in June 2018, like the other redevelopment plan, again, to give the borough an opportunity to reevaluate this redevelopment area, recognizing the site had not been developed in over 10 years in accordance with the plan, and also to address the borough's third round affordable housing criteria. This 2020 redevelopment plan addresses all the requirements of the local redevelopment housing law in terms of the process, consistency with other plans, and checks off all the various boxes that are enumerated in the plan itself. I'll throw up the concept while I talk about some aspects of this plan. So you should be able to see conceptually what we've prepared for this site. It contemplates, or it allows for a mixed-use development. It includes in this area a small, it can include a small retail component on the first floor, generally with multifamily units above and surface level parking. We did provide for, we'll call it a rooftop amenity above the parking area to allow for a buffer between the residential component and the elevated portion of Route 4, which is to the southwest. Ultimately, whatever developer is selected would be entitled to build within the development framework for which the bulk criteria is provided in the plan. Generally, the proposed setbacks are 5 feet from all adjacent right-of-ways and within a maximum 4-story building. It recognizes that the site is developed with a number of existing uses, including a landscape contractor's office, garage, and storage area, as well as a laundromat. So the impervious coverage is a bit higher here and probably more akin to what you would see in a somewhat urbanized environment, and which I think personally is probably reasonable for the area and how this area might develop around the train station in whatever time frame that may occur. Pardon my rambling to get back to my notes here. So again, there are a number of residential units permitted above the surface parking at 20 units per acre. That translates to about 19 total units with a 20% affordable housing set aside. Again, there's a rooftop amenity that's permitted as a buffer. It's not required necessarily. Within a 4-story building, you can see there are streetscape improvements, including the conceptual planting areas and trees planted at regular spacing intervals. There is a driveway that accesses Ackerson Street and an egress driveway that empties out onto Kinderkamak Road. There's a dumpster enclosure area over here. This area of the site is elevated quite a bit as it abuts the elevated portion of Route 4. So it's kind of, theoretically, I guess it could be developable, but for the purposes of preparing this concept plan, we focused on I'll call it the flat or lower portion of the site. And again, similar to the other plan, it includes a number of accessory uses and features. And I think the way to look at this plan again is that it's a conceptual framework for some prospective future development or developer that would come in with some concept and have to develop within this framework or request relief from the borough for something else. In terms of satisfying the master plan consistency review, this plan, I believe, satisfies a number of the borough's master plan goals and objectives, similar to the other plan in terms of addressing a portion of the borough's affordable housing requirement, providing an alternative housing option, as well as providing investment in what might be considered an underutilized commercial area of the borough. So for those reasons, I think it's my opinion that the borough is not only not inconsistent, but it is rather consistent with a number of the borough's master plan goals and objectives. So at this point, I will turn it over to the board for any questions.
Okay, I'm going to run down the list real quick.
Yep.
Mr. Esposito,
I'm okay.
Mr. Gibbons.
Just a quick point of clarity. Both of these, I guess, had retail/commercial and multifamily. Is that just to show the options to a developer that this is what could potentially go here? Obviously,
well, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. With respect to the Newbridge Landing one, I'll start there. There are certain requirements of where certain uses could be. For instance, you couldn't have residential uses on the first floor on the westerly portion. And similarly, you couldn't have retail uses above the first floor. So we did try to, try to promote more of a mixed use situation rather than have one sort of, one type of use dominate the property. So that is the vision, but there are a number of uses and a number of mixtures that could occur on the site. And that also goes for the Kinderkamak Road development, that residential uses would have to be above the first floor, and there could be a commercial space on the first floor if so desired by the prospective developer.
And there would have to be some sort of residential and if anyone were to develop either of these.
That's the way they've been designed. And again, because they are primarily, they've been prepared to address the borough's affordable housing requirements. So that would be the case, that as drafted, they would need some level of residential development.
Okay. Yeah, it all looks great. Just I noticed that on both plans, so I was just curious. Thank you.
Mr. Kesslin.
No questions. I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Cray.
Yeah, one question, I meant to ask this on the new bridge and I forgot. The affordable housing requirements, it's 20%, but then it's 13% of the required units have to be very low income. Just for clarity, it's 13% of the 20%, or it's 13%?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, it's 13% of the 20%. So if you have 10 affordable units, 13% of that would have to be very low. And there are different categories of affordability: moderate, low, and very low, and they have to do with they're relative to the county's or the region's median income. Right. So a moderate income is 80% of the region's median income, low is 50%, and very low is 30% or less.
Okay.
Let's see. We are up to Mr. Merman.
Yes. A couple of minor comments. Once again, Tom, I think you did a wonderful job, especially within the time constraint. I reviewed the document, while we did it, the board should know that I had a discussion with Tom separately on both of these. My main comments were, and I know, Tom, you recognize it, but the board should be aware of it also, that this is within a 100-year floodplain, and you did mention that in the document. Once again, I reviewed the bulk requirements, and I kind of take a little exception on the bulk requirements. You have a setback along Kinderkamack Road. You're proposing 5 feet there, and also along Ackerson of 5 feet. I kind of take exception to those. I think that it tends to lead to urbanization of the downtown area. I also note that the Kinderkamack area setback on the transit one across the street was 20 feet, and on Hackensack Avenue, on Grand Avenue, it was also 20 feet. So I think that personally think those 5 feet should be increased. I'm looking at something like 15 feet along Kinderkamack and maybe 10 feet along Ackerson. The reasoning being, as I mentioned, urbanization effect of lower downtown. And I also think that that low number is going to set a precedent down there, especially when you look forward to the Feathers parcel and including the Grand Avenue portion. They're going to come in. We're going to be looking at this sometime in the future, probably the near future, and this will set a precedent of 5 feet, which is going to give you a further canyon effect downtown. So basically, those are my comments.
Tom?
I appreciate that. We did, as Mr. Merman mentioned, we discussed this, or we discussed the different plans and certain aspects of them earlier. So I fully appreciate and respect his comments. I know he's been involved in this area, in this town, much longer than I have, and he has more experience in that area than I do. I will say that, and it may be a difference of opinion or vision. While I understand that smaller setbacks can be perceived as being more urbanized, I think there's a couple of ways to look at this site in particular. One is in that size-wise, it's somewhat constrained to achieve the density while keeping the building relatively low. I think we'd have less of an issue if we went up a number of stories. Having been involved in planning efforts in other places, more urbanized settings, you'll often see a 0-foot setback, and I think that's what the prior redevelopment plan for this site had, was a 0-foot setback. So we've actually improved on that a bit. It may not be as far as preferred by some, and I respect that. Looking at the plan, what we generally contemplated for this area was a sidewalk, wide enough to accommodate, normal pedestrian traffic, and streetscaping trees and somewhat of a green space that sort of opens up here. This is the property line. This line, if you follow it here. And so the way the road is currently developed, and I mean, to be fair, it could be widened in the future. I don't know if it would, but as shown, you do have, from this corner, you have about a 5-foot setback. Then you have maybe about a 10-foot green space and then a sidewalk. You know, I certainly understand the concern that a developer could, you know, stretch the building to be within 5 feet and eat up more of this you know, front yard area. From my perspective, and again, reasonable minds can disagree. I think it's reasonable. I think it's an improvement from the previous plan. And while the Newbridge Landing Station plan has 20-foot setbacks, the reason for that, from our perspective, was to allow for wider sidewalks, in that we saw that as having more pedestrian traffic, and if there was seating put outside on the sidewalk, a wider setback would accommodate that, again, having a wider sidewalk. So that's somewhat of the distinction there. Again, I fully hear and respect what Mr. Merman's saying, but you know, that's how this was developed. And maybe before we revisit that, we can get some more comments from the board.
Okay, next up, Mr. Merman, are you done?
Yes, I am.
Okay, next up will be Mr. Bartoloni.
No, I don't know. I'm good.
What's the cause?
I'm guessing that was a no, Al?
Sorry, no.
Okay. Then we're up to Council President Caningo.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got my questions answered.
And next would be the mayor.
So Tom, I'm in agreement with Dick Merman that we might want to consider more like maybe not 10 and 15, but 10 and 10. At this stage in the process, is that something that we're capable of considering, or are the time constraints that we're currently under making that practically impossible?
It could be done, to answer your question. So we're operating under, we're within the compliance phase. We had, again, our compliance hearing in July and was extended to October, you know, with the understanding that we would have a conditional approval and would have to satisfy a number of conditions or requirements, the redevelopment plans being one of them, in order to make these tweaks. And Marina, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're substantial enough where this one plan would have to be reintroduced by council. So we would essentially start the process over. It's not impossible. I think the council's next meeting would be, next available meeting would be the 26th, because, well, actually it could be introduced, it could be introduced the 13th.
I can say that the board could recommend that the redevelopment plan be amended to increase the setback. Then that recommendation would go to the council. The council can decide to accept that recommendation, or they can decide to not accept that recommendation and approve the redevelopment plan without that. Or if the council does wish to accept the recommendation, then like Tom said, the council would reintroduce the development plan, and then the process would resume again.
Thank you for clarifying. Marina is absolutely correct. So it could be done. It would be done after our October compliance hearing, but I spoke to the special master this week, and I think we have some window of flexibility to do it, but we would have to get it done relatively quickly. So theoretically, it could be done, yes.
And I would urge this board to consider recommending to the council 10 feet. Mr. Merman had said 10 and 15, but I think 10 feet setback. I do worry that we are getting more and more of an urban look in the southern part of town that creeps north. In addition, if these developments occur, I just think it would be better for the look of the town, for the policing of the town, for the effect on overall property values, that we consider a 10-foot setback, 2 10-foot setbacks. I think that would be more in keeping with our town. So I urge this board to consider that.
So if a motion is made with this recommendation, the board can make a motion saying that the redevelopment plan as it is is not inconsistent with the master plan and also recommends the 10-foot setback, or the board could entertain a motion that the redevelopment plan is inconsistent with the master plan and should have the 10-foot setbacks.
So I would think, I'd love some comment from Tom on this. I think that proving that it's consistent with a recommendation of 10 feet would be the appropriate way to go. But Tom and others, I suggest comment.
I'll chime in. I think, and Mayor, I appreciate your comments, and with respect to setbacks, and we'll obviously do whatever we need to do there. I would say I think, and again, for some of the reasons I stated before, that the majority of the plan, despite the setbacks, still satisfies the master plan consistency review criteria, and that it is not inconsistent with the master plan. The board can disagree with my opinion, certainly. The one caveat I would mention is that if the board were to find this inconsistent with the master plan, then there is an impact to the vote that would have to occur at the council level, which may or may not be an issue. Marina, correct me, I think there's, I forget the terminology, but there's a majority of the council would have to overcome that inconsistency.
If the board if the board states that the redevelopment plan is inconsistent with the master plan, the council may still approve the redevelopment plan, but they need an affirmative vote of a majority of the sitting members.
So that's why I would urge this board to approve this master plan as consistent, or in the verbiage, I think Tom is not inconsistent, and but make a recommendation to the council for a 10-foot setback. I hope this board might consider that.
So I'm just going to weigh in just for a second. My biggest concern is timing. I know that the borough is under the gun to have this approved. I realize that the setbacks are probably an issue. I'm in agreement with both the mayor and Mr. Merman on that the 5 feet might be a little bit light. However, I think any project that comes in under this plan is obviously going to come back before this board, and we could enforce that down the road with any changes that they're going to make to the site that is different than what's being proposed. Although I agree that we should that we need to send that recommendation, or at least our thoughts on that, I would like to find a mechanism to get this approved tonight, so the borough could just move forward without angering anybody that's overseeing us right now. I don't know how everybody else feels about that.
Well, but Mr. Arakelian, I thought both Ms. Stinley and Mr. Barron said saying this is consistent and saying that with a recommendation does move it forward. And I think Mr. Barron's also said, and Ms. Stinley, is that the council had enough time, if it chose to accept the recommendation, to complete the process. Or was I mistaken with that, Mr. Barron?
So I'm going to go to Ms. Stinley. If we send this back, so it's going to go back to the council for the, I don't know if we can get on the agenda for the next meeting or not on this, but let's say we could, which is, I believe, next Monday, Tuesday, then they would have to come back to our agenda again for us to reapprove this. The time frame there, that going to disrupt what the borough will accomplish.
So as long as the board tonight says that the redevelopment plan is not inconsistent with the master plan, the council can proceed, and the redevelopment plan can go forward even with the recommendation. It would be then up to the council whether they want to accept the recommendation. That's not going to require coming back before the board, because the board already stated that the plan is consistent with the master plan.
Then that works out perfectly. Okay. I just want to make sure we don't put the barrel under the gun for any,
No. I think that Ms. Dinley and Mr. Behrings has said it doesn't need to come back as long as this board states that it is not inconsistent. And then it's left up to the council to adopt the new setback or not. And if the council chooses to do that, it still only remains in the council's purview and does not come back to the land use board. Am I correct on that?
Yes, and the council will be holding a public hearing on the redevelopment plan and any recommendations that the land use board provides to the council.
Perfect. Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Mr. Behrens. Tom, if we go ahead and change the setback requirement to 10 feet, is that going to impact the plan with respect to what we have to have for possible residents?
You mean in terms of fitting the density? Is that your question?
Correct.
I worked on this with one of our partners at the firm, who's really the landscape designer who did a lot of this concept. So I think we could probably shave off the 5 feet and make it work, is my initial inclination. But I would have to, we'd have to take a look at it and make sure that
I'm just going to state for the record that personally, I'm going to respectfully disagree with the mayor and Mr. Merman and Mr. Arakilian, even though I know you all have a lot more experience than me. I want to note that, I understand that, but given the location of this particular building and given the fact that any future applications are going to come before this board, and we can always point to the fact that the location played in part of it, I don't see a problem with the 5 foot setback. So just for the record, thank you.
Yeah, I want to say,
May I respond to that for a second, Mr. Arakilian?
I'm ambivalent either way on the change or not.
What I'm asking the board to do is put it into the council's hands. So all I'm asking is for the board to make a recommendation. It's not binding on the council. I think to give the council this flexibility is more in keeping with the way governance should occur, but that's my opinion. So I respectfully disagree with Council President Kanigo.
All right, so let's go this route, similar to the route. Ms. Finley, do we need to open to the public or no?
No.
Okay, so let's go this route. If everybody is in agreement, I'm going to entertain a motion, a first motion to for that it is in compliance and with the recommendation of the 5 feet going to 10. And then we'll vote on that. And if we pass it, it passes. If not, then we'll take that additional piece out and we'll remotion it to see if we can get an approval then, both with the consistency. If we don't have that, then we'll go to the next step. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Dick Merman here. If we change the setback, does that put the master plan in compliance or out of compliance?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. You know, your question, does it comply more with the setback issue or not? I mean, in reviewing the master plan goals and objectives, it doesn't really speak to this issue specifically. It does talk about redevelopment in this area of town.
Okay, all right.
Without getting too specific.
Let me put it this way. We could say that this document this document complies with the master plan, and in the other motion we can make a recommendation to change the setbacks. Is that possible?
Marina, I think you could do that. So
could you just repeat that?
I think that there'd be a vote to, one, determine that it's not inconsistent with the master plan, and the second vote, or pole,
Oh,
whatever.
okay, so
would
it
be-
is,
would be for the
all
setback.
right, so the vote would be that the document is consistent with the master plan. Okay, so that takes care of that, and then we could approve the document with an amended setback recommendation.
Correct. That's
Okay.
generally how it works.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so why don't we just do that?
Okay. So
And-
we'll
What-
do one vote about consistency and one vote about whether we're recommending the 10-foot setback or the regular setbacks.
Yeah, and by the way, the 10-foot is acceptable.
Okay.
All right. So,
All right, so I will entertain a motion at this point that this is in compliance and with the master plan.
all right, so I'll make that motion, so made.
Do I?
Who is the second? I'm sorry.
Keeney, go.
Okay.
Mr. Behrens, could you stop presenting so that the council
Oh,
will
I'm,
hear?
I'm sorry. Yes. There we go. Sorry.
There you are.
Okay.
All
All
right,
right.
so we have a motion and by Mr. Merman, a second by Councilman Caningo, and roll call,
Okay.
please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
and Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so that has passed. The next motion would be on a recommendation by this board to change the 5-foot setback to a 10-foot setback, with the understanding it's a recommendation and the council will make the final decision.
And those two setbacks only apply to Kinderkamack and Atkinson. The Route 4 5-foot would remain. You got 3 5-footers there. So we'd only change Kinderkamack Road from 5 to 10 and change Atkinson Street from 5 to 10. The Route 4 at 5 would remain. As those would be the recommendation.
Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I have that in the form of a motion then, Mr. Merman?
Well, so May, did you really want me to take the resolution and revise the resolution, or what?
That's going to be that'll be one more vote after this.
Okay, all right. So,
So
I will make that second motion with the setback recommendations.
And since I'm supporting it, I'll second it.
Okay.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni,
No.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo,
No.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. So the board will recommend to the council to change the 2 setbacks on Kinderkamack Road and Ackerson from 5 feet to 10 feet.
Okay. So now we need
Now
one.
Now we'll do one more vote on the resolution. I didn't include that in the resolution, so I will revise that. So the motion will have to reflect the amendment.
Correct. Okay.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the resolution as changed this evening.
As amended. All right. So if you want, Mr. Chairman, I will make that motion that we accept an amended resolution. And that's it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Councilman Kinigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay. I'll make the amendment tomorrow morning and send it for signatures.
All right, folks, I appreciate your time this evening. It's 10:06, so we're 6 minutes paid time and a half. I appreciate everybody's input. Listen, this is why we're a board the way we are. We're all professionals, all up and down the board, one way or another, and it's great getting the input. Sometimes we don't all agree, but at the end of the day, I think we have a great consensus, and I'm proud of the work that we've done tonight. We do have a busy schedule coming up. We've got a subdivision I think is going to be coming up. We have a D variance coming up on a change from 1 to a 2 family over on Kinderkamak. And I think another food license coming up hopefully soon. So we'll probably have a meeting in 2 weeks. I know that beginning of the year, we tried to limit the meetings, but fortunately, we're doing it electronically right now, so that doesn't really take people out of their homes twice a month.
Mr. Arkalian, with the D variance, I believe Councilman Kanigo and I are excluded from that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if that meeting could be arranged so that the D variance was at the end of the meeting, we would be grateful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments, questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Gibbons.
Second, Portaloni.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstained? Again, thank you, everybody. Those that didn't catch it when we were in our recess, we wish Councilwoman Kaufman, Kaufman's mother, our well wishes, and I think that she's been a big help to us. So we missed her this evening, and I thank her for all of her work. And thank you, Mayor, for hosting this evening.
Glad to do it.
All right, have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Mr. Arkalian, thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What?